Okay, so in the first two videos, we started with what is Bitcoin. We said Bitcoin is valuable because it's useful and it's scarce. We also said that it's not enough to just be scarce, right? Like the Dodge Neon is more scarce than Bitcoin, and Dodge Neon is not worth more than Bitcoin. So scarcity is necessary, but not sufficient. We really need to get to is, what is money? Is Bitcoin money? Why is all that? And there's all kinds of terribly boring explanations about this. But the bottom line is you know what money is. You've known what money is slash was since you were a kid. Since you went to payphones and tried to see if there were quarters in the change thing. If you're over 30, I don't know if anybody has that experience these days anymore. But even children know what money is. It's not something you need some academic to tell you, like, oh, well, it's fungible, and it has scarcity, and it's transportable, and it's easily all these factors that always get mentioned, right? That's after the fact. That's somebody describing an observed phenomenon and being like, oh, well, this is money because I knew it was money, and then I came up with 5 adjectives about it. Bottom line is money is an emergent phenomenon, right? It's a social phenomenon. It's complicated. It's iterative. It's always evolving. And Bitcoin is an attempt to kind of jump on that train. It's practically studying the experience of money in human history and saying, okay, great. Well, can we approximate that with something that itself is also iterative and subject to change and human interpretation and optimization, all of that? And will that be money? So in that sense, Bitcoin is still this running experiment. But to expand a little bit on the what is money thing, to not be too unsatisfying, I really like the example of the ancient Athenians, who became a wealthy culture pretty much by just finding a pile of silver in their backyard at some silver mines called Laurium. But it's not like the Athenians found this silver and they were like, hey, Professor Socrates, like, is this money? We found this rock. I think it's divisible. And he's like, well, maybe is it scarce? They're like, yeah, well, there's not that much of it. And he's like, well, check, make sure everything's on the list. Like, no, they didn't go through some academic exercise. They didn't even look at it. They weren't like, oh, we found this rock in the ground. What can we do with it? Maybe we're rich. They immediately knew, right? We've found money. This is a big deal. Should we buy a fleet of ships and be a massive naval power and have all sorts of cultural outpourings and other interesting things that are associated with their history? Or, the other idea they had was, oh, let's just give it to everybody and everybody will be rich. But even the Athenians had a certain level of economic acumen to know that maybe that wouldn't necessarily work the same way. But the point is, they didn't have to go through this academic checklist to be like, hey, we found silver. What does this mean? They knew immediately, right? Oh, we found a bunch of money. We found a bunch of cash. It's an emergent phenomenon. It's not something that some professor can tell you about. You can talk about it and have all sorts of interesting adjectives and see certain patterns. And Bitcoin is an attempt to take some of that knowledge from those patterns and say, like, hey, if we follow these things, maybe we can create money with this system. But money is an emergent phenomenon. So 2 key points here. Money is an emergent phenomenon. It's not top-down defined. It's not defined by academics. And Bitcoin is designed as an attempt to participate in that phenomenon. When Bitcoin started, it was an experiment. I'm sure Satoshi wasn't like, oh, I know exactly what money is. I'm going to make money. End of story. Money is a complicated idea. Bitcoin was thrown out there as an experiment. Bitcoin wasn't money in 2009 the way it's money today, because there's all sorts of other effects that we'll talk about in later videos. So money is an emergent phenomenon. Bitcoin is a designed attempt to participate in that phenomenon. And that's where we're at.